Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the video. Welcome to my garage. In today's video, I'm going to do a bit of a dry run on the installation of the axles for Ratchet. I have probably 95% of the parts in, and I want to install it. I want to figure out if I'm going to run with plunging or non-plunging CVs on the transaxle side, and I want to see what kind of suspension travel numbers I'm going to be getting. So here are the axles. This is the original U-joint axle that I was initially running. Those of you guys who have followed the channel know that I had some durability issues with that. So after realizing that wasn't going to be strong enough for me, I upgraded to CV axles. This end here, this is on the hub end. This is made by RCV Performance. This is specifically designed for the Toyota 4Runner hubs, which is what I'm running in the rear. And then when I come to the transaxle side, this right here is a plunging CV. This is a non-plunging CV. I'll put a link to a separate video I made talking about the differences between those. These are both Type 15 or Porsche 930 sized. And then this here is the custom axle I just had made. This is the part I was waiting on. This was made by RCV Performance as well, and they needed exact dimensions from me so that they could cut this to the right size. Now that I have all these pieces, what I'm going to do is I'm going to install it just like it is here with the plunging CV. This one, I think I'll set it up to about 22 degrees. I'm going to see what sort of suspension numbers I get. Then I'm going to replace this with the non-plunging, because I think I'm barely going to have any plunge at all because of my rear suspension setup. Actually, I'll verify that as well when I put the plunging CV in there. If I, in fact, don't have any plunge, which I shouldn't, and if I have any, it should be very, very minimal, then I want to try it with the non-plunging CV, because this one can go up to 40 degrees. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to use it all the way up to 40 degrees, but I'll see if it's more practical to use the non-plunging or the plunging. Okay, so now I've got the axle installed, and what I've actually done here is I've cranked the rear suspension up to full compression. You can see it's bottomed out on the bump stop. This whole setup was designed for 35-inch tires, so I have this up so that if there was a 35-inch tire mounted on here, the bottom of the chassis would be right at the chassis ground. Now, I want to design it so that it goes that far. If I want to make adjustments to that so that the chassis doesn't actually hit the ground, I can just change the depth of the bump stop here so that, you know, maybe I wanted the bump stop to actually bottom out 1 inch before the chassis hits the ground. I can make those adjustments here. Regardless, at this point, I need to have everything set up so that it can go full travel if needed. So in this situation, let me take, and I'm going to start taking some angle measurements. The chassis right now, I've got a jack under there and a jack under there. So I've got the chassis level this way. It's level 90 degrees this way, so that I can take measurements off this axle and they'll, you know, be within a degree accurate. So if I put my angle gauge on there, then as it sits right now, I'm at 24.9, so let's call that 25 degrees, which you're not really supposed to operate those plunging CVs, like they want you to not go beyond 22, but being that this is just full compression, like I'm almost never going to be there, and if I am, it's going to be really quick. So I don't have a problem with that. What I have right now is I've got the limiting strap on here just so that everything is exactly the same as it was when I had the U-joints, because I think the U-joints were getting around 22 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lower this until the limiting strap goes tight, and then I'm going to measure the angle again. All right, now I've got it cranked down all the way so the limiting strap here is tight, and the drive shaft is at 21.8 degrees. So it's 22 degrees, which is right where they want you to be. Feels nice and smooth. Nothing obviously is binding, so that's good. Here is the issue. In this setup, I can't put the springs on. I've got the bypass and the coilover right here. In order to put, not so much the bypass, but in order to be able to put the coilover on, what I do is I crank it up a little bit, I disconnect the limiting strap so that I can lower it down all the way so that the bypass and the coilover are at full extension. And then I put the bolt in there, then I crank it back up, and I put the limiting strap in there. What I want to know is, can I take this plunging CV down to that point so that I can put the components in there and then jack it back up to put this on there. So I'm going to take it down as far as it needs to go for that, and I'm going to keep checking that CV to see if it's giving me any troubles. All right, now it's beyond full droop. Like I said, I've taken off the limiting strap, so now what's limiting it is the actual bypass shock. The bypass shock and the coilover both limit at the same, so I don't need to put the coilover on to see this. So this is as far as it would drop. So like if the limiting strap broke, it would drop down to here, and at that point, the drive shaft is at 27 degrees, and if I rotate it, doesn't seem too bad. Hard to tell. Ah, crap. My headlight just pooped out. Honestly, it doesn't really seem like it's an issue for the CV. I think maybe because this is non-plunging, it makes it a little bit easier for that. I'm not really sure. But I'll be honest with you, I'd probably be okay running this. I mean, I wouldn't run it like this, but what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to comfortably take the limiting strap out so that I can extend the suspension all the way, because, you know, sometimes when I'm making repairs or tuning it or whatever, I want to take the bypass and I want to take the coilover out, and I don't want to have a drive shaft that can't make the angles that those can make. So I wanted to make sure that this can make that angle with those. But regardless, I'm going to take that out now, and I'm going to swap it. I'm going to swap it with this non-plunging CV, because this one is like the one that's built into the hub here. This one goes to 40 degrees. So this one should take this 27, 28 degrees with no problem whatsoever. So I just want to put this in here and make sure that it fits. And if it does, I'll most likely go with this one, because it seems like there's no plunging happening at all. So let me swap these and see how it goes. All right, now in that time lapse, I got the non-plunging CV mounted in here. I also put a marker line in there because I wanted to know if it actually plunges at all. And to be honest with you, when it's through most of its useful travel, there's really no discernible plunge at all. When it gets to the really, really down bottom, I did notice that it would go in about 1/8 of an inch. So there is a little bit of plunge as it reaches the max. But I was taking that to the max of the bypass, and I will obviously have the limiting strap on there, and I won't be allowing it to go all the way to that limit. So yeah, there is a little bit of plunge, but if you watch, even though the CV joint itself doesn't plunge, this isn't bolted on here yet, so I can actually push this, and there is some allowable plunge just with the axle sliding within the CV itself. So although they say they don't plunge at all, and the CVs themselves really don't plunge at all, but you can see that there is actually a little bit of slop to be made up there. So even though it moved a little bit, I think I'm gonna stick with the non-plunging CV, since I don't need the plunging aspect of it. And this way I know that if I'm at the 22, that's like nothing for this. If I happen to be at full maximum droop, it's at 28 degrees, which is also really nothing for that CV or for this CV. So I know that if it's strapped, or if I need to pull the strap off, to pull the shocks out, or if I'm driving and the strap happens to break, then I know that on the next extension, it's not just gonna self-grenade my CV joints. So I'm gonna go with the non-plunging. Boy, these plunging CVs are really bizarre. They're so loose, you'd wonder how they actually hold themselves together. But they do. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Now that I had most of the components for these axles, I wanted to kind of test everything, make sure it fits. It does fit. I've still got to get some axle clips, some boots, and of course I've got to grease everything. I'm not going to do that now because I'm forging full speed on Mauler. Not really supposed to be doing much on Ratchet while I try to finish up Mauler. But obviously, getting the axle, I wanted to actually install it and make sure that it fits, because if you remember, that was a totally custom order. So I wanted to make sure everything was good. But everything's good there. It looks like I could realistically say I'll be getting 20 inches of travel out of the rear, which is what I was shooting for. So I'm happy about that. So I've got 20 in the rear, I've got 20 in the front. I'm more than happy with that. I'm not going to try to stretch it any farther than that. And now I'm glad that with these CVs, I can actually pop the limiting strap off and drop it all the way down so that I can take out the bypass or the coils if I need to. Because once I get these axles greased up and the boots on there, removing the axles is actually kind of a big dirty job as far as I can tell. So I don't want to have to be doing that if I don't absolutely have to be doing it. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope it's helping, showing you how I figure some of this stuff out. And if nothing else, I hope it's entertaining you a little bit. Hope you're having a good day, and I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.